Yo, what up? This is AKIR representing Rebel Arms. You're now checking out B-Shine. Well, I came from a household that constantly played records and danced and celebrated. So, many of my first memories about music was hip hop music, reggae music, soul music, jazz music. So it was already coming, to me in my house, and then outside, especially in New York City, man, and being in Washington Heights, you hear, bachata, merengue, salsa, you know what I mean? So I'm kind of like a child of hip hop because, when I came on the scene, it was already cats pumping, LL down the block, or, Eric B. and Rakim, or EPMD. So there was never really a moment where I recognized, like, wow, this is something different. It was already part of my culture. I remember hearing PE and being exposed to PE records through my cousin, and my father at the time was dating this woman who was working at Columbia Records. So I had the opportunity to go up to Columbia several times, and I got my first like hip hop care package, so to speak, was Public Enemy, Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back. And it was unreleased at that point. And then I also had Slick Rick, the Great Adventures of Slick Rick, before it dropped. And man, I remember watching. It might have been Ralph McDaniels, and I saw the video of the Night of the Living Bassheads. And probably a week before that, my dad had walked me to the train station one day, and we stopped and looked at this building that I passed by my whole life. And he was like, "This is the Audubon Ballroom. This is where Malcolm X was shot." And then he explained to me who Malcolm X was. And then that following week, I'm watching TV and I see Public Enemy rocking in front of the Audubon Ballroom. So that was really ill to me, especially to know that, I was so close to something like that. And at that point I had been listening to the record, maybe 3 to 6 months before it even dropped. So it was very, very special to me. I mean, number one is the cipher. That's basically how I was able to find out that I was even good at it. I had no idea until maybe it was like 15, 16 years old that I could even rap for real. I used to play around with my friends here and there as a joke, but I never really considered myself a rapper, or even knew that I could do it legitimately. And then from there, it just became gatherings between, me and somebody who beatbox, or me and somebody who sang, or me and another MC, or me and a DJ. So that was the main thing. And then every time I would travel, I would go to different people's environments, and there would always be a cipher breaking out somewhere on the corner. I would just jump into ciphers, and even when I was like timid about it, I always have a friend with me who's like, "Nah, man, like, nah, you don't go improve yourself." And I had to step in there and make my bones, so to speak. Another big thing I think that led to my success was traveling. There's a big, I won't call it a myth because there is something to it, but there's a big statement in hip hop and in the music industry in general would say, if you're looking to, attract the world's attention, you have to first create a resonance at home, a buzz at the crib, and I did that for quite some time. I was in DC at this point in time, and I did that for quite some time. I did all the ciphers. I went to the record stores. I did the radio shows. I was showing up at other people's events, doing all these things, but it seemed like I kept meeting a glass ceiling. And then I started traveling back home to New York, and I would do the same thing in New York. But when I returned to DC, now all of a sudden new opportunities will open up to me. It's what I like to call dick riding. You know what I'm saying? Like, people are like, "Oh shit, well, I heard now you're doing big things outside, blah blah blah." Well, I was doing big things while I was right beside you and you didn't notice it. So my biggest advice to upcoming MCs is, yeah, of course you're supposed to start at home and create a movement at home, but it's far and few between times where people will recognize you for real without you accomplishing something elsewhere and bringing the prize back home, you know. And it was interesting because then when I started to figure it out, the same thing would happen to me in New York. You know, I dropped down to New York and they're like, oh, I heard you was in D.C. doing your thing, whoop-de-whoop-de-whoop. And then I was able to play those two back and forth, and it started to open up different opportunities. I was given the opportunity to go to prep school for high school. And obviously on a track like that, you expect a certain level of academia to propel you into like a high level professional career pattern or whatever path. And yeah, man, I ended up going to college, and I remember like, you know, thinking about it for days and weeks. How am I gonna explain to my parents, like, you know, forget all the sacrifices that you had to make to send me to this type of, you know, level of academia, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, I'm gonna just be out here, you know, on the street rhyming and shit, you know. So, but it takes those challenges in life for you to really identify who you are and to be able to propel yourself towards your personal goals, you know. So it's definitely a challenge to all the MCs out there who, you know, may be self-conscious or maybe insecure about actually telling the world who they are. Again, at that point, it also does start at the crib. You know what I'm saying? When I was able to tell myself that I am an MC and this is what I love and this is what I want to do, and then to be able to tell my father and my mother that, there was nobody in the world who I needed to explain myself to. You know, mostly it's the camaraderie, it's the opportunity to come together with like-minded people and make something out of nothing. You know, many different cultures have these opportunities. Some of them are like, you know, communes, tribal gatherings, festivities, celebrations. There's many different names for it, but at the end of the day, it's sharing ideas, notions. To me, it's a very spiritual value. You know, for people in church, they might call it catching the Holy Ghost. For me, I call it freestyling. You know, like you just get this burgeoning energy that you can't help but express, and it's a very special thing when that happens, not only with you, but with the people that are around you. You know, it's inexplicable. Honestly, it's just something that is, to me, is proof of what life is worth, and the meaning of love and community and sharing. You know what I'm saying? So I appreciate that. You know what I mean? Even in I've been in some like ratchet ass spots with some like thugged out kids, and we there just like everybody sharing and going off, and you just hear hear somebody in the crowd go woo, you know, like there's magic to it. You know what I mean? Early on, I was able to make some significant achievements. One of them for me that always stood out was the unsigned hype, the Source unsigned hype. Doesn't mean as much today as it once did, but for us, you know, coming up, it was important to, soon as you unwrap the cassette or the vinyl or the CD or whatever, you look through the credits, you read the lyrics, you saw who was involved, you know, and then when that person, you know, you were excited about that person's album prior to that because you got notice that it was coming, and when that person got that unsigned hype, man, you knew that they were like shooting for the stars, and it's one of those things that accredits you like nothing else can, and to me, that was my first acknowledgement to myself and to the world that I've made history in hip hop music. You know, in addition to that, man, I've been lucky enough to travel the world with my friends, and you know, that in itself is a huge accomplishment. You know, if I had an unfortunate passing or what have you, I know that I could rest in the fact that, you know, I found what I love to do. I succeeded. I succeeded at spreading it across the world, and and I use that as a vehicle to not only feed my family, but also to learn about different cultures and exchange with different people. And it's a beautiful thing. To be honest with you, it's very special. Like, there's not a lot of people who are able to do that, you know. And I have to often remind myself of those accomplishments because, you know, as any artist will tell you, man, it's a very trying profession. You know, it's just being an independent entrepreneur in general is trying. So the financial reward might not be there all the time, or, you know, the popularity might not be there all the time, but, you know, to be able to have those little benchmarks that you can remind yourself, hey man, like, you know, there's a reason why you're doing this, is very important. Honestly, like, spread the message of like celebrating your life and being positive and coming together. And I've been able to do that internationally. You know, I've also been able to teach children. Like, you know, I don't have certain accreditations that would normally land me in a situation where I would be able to share what I've done or what have you. But my hip hop credentials have led me to certain places where people actually want to hear what I have to say, and I have an opportunity to share my experiences with them. You know, I know all that shit sounds wild corny, but it really it really means a lot to me. You know, because I know me as a dad, I don't want just anybody talking to my children and informing them about things. So you have to have a certain level of trust and respect and accreditation to be able to do that. And hip hop has allowed me to do that. It's also allowed me to, like I said, it's also allowed me to feed my family. You know, like I've definitely had financial difficulties bearing through it, and I'm not wealthy by any means, but legitimately I can tell you that, like, my child has eaten off of hip hop music, and as small as that may be, that's a benchmark for me, because a lot of people don't even get the opportunity to figure out what they're passionate about, number one, let alone be able to use that passion as a vehicle to support their life and their family's life. So unity and love, G. Like, there's all of these gray clouds, so to speak, that continue to be promoted in media and entertainment because they're sensationalized, you know, murder, sex, violence, drugs, so on and so forth. But anybody will tell you who's been dealing with those, especially someone who's been dealing with those aggressively and emphatically, or like addicted to them, that many times that shit is like a dead end, man. And there's a lot of people that I've lost to those type of situations. And, you know, I even feel hypocritical saying it, because I know that I partake in some of those elements as well. And there's information that I have on my CDs or my MP3s that might lend to those at times, because that's the environment that we're living in. But ultimately, I'm hoping that every day I wake up, I have an opportunity to kind of change that path, and I'm sharing my experience with people, so hopefully they can also do that and progress. And I think that's what a legacy is about. It's not necessarily just, you know, leaving a whole bunch of shit behind for somebody to, you know, to say that they, you know, that they're better than another person. It's about leaving tools for someone to create a better circumstances and better opportunities. So I'm hoping that someone in the future will be able to use my craft as a stepping stone for whatever they're going to build.